Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing my December reading wrap-up, the last one for 2022. That's blowing my mind. If you are interested, I did do a best and worst books of the year, which I'll link above if you want to check it out. And let's go ahead and hop into our first book. I read 11 different books this month, a lot of great nonfiction and a lot of great mysteries, some really high star reads. Definitely stay tuned for this older series that I started that I just was really surprised by in like the best way possible, so stay tuned for that. So the first one that I recently checked out from my library was Peril in Paris by Rhys Bowen. This is part of the Royal Spinus mystery series. It is an all-time favorite mystery series of mine. It's a historical fiction cozy mystery series. Basically you have our main character, Lady Georgiana, or Georgie as her friends call her, and she throughout the series does different odd jobs and things. She's part of the royal family technically, but she's so far down the line that she has like the status part, but not really the financial component of being royal. So she ends up being down on her luck a lot. She refuses to marry this prince her family tries to set her up with because she's really repulsed by him, and she does all these odd jobs and gets into these different hijinks and mysteries and stuff throughout the series. So I was very much looking forward to Peril in Paris because it just came out in November this year and it did not disappoint. 5-star read for me. Basically, Georgie goes out to visit her friend Belinda, who is living in Paris, and Belinda is actually designing clothes and helping Chanel out. So she's working on this like fashion show. Georgie decides to stay with her for a while, and at the fashion show someone ends up dying. It's very dramatic. There's a lot of great historical elements. The plotline right now, it takes place like kind of in between World War I and like approaching World War II, so the tensions between like Germany and other parts of Europe are really starting to mount. It's very interesting to read about. Georgie is a really spunky, interesting character. I absolutely love her. This was an excellent read. I could not recommend the series enough if you love historical fiction. It's just a winner every time. So I did read a couple nonfiction this month. I always feel like I get really into nonfiction, especially around the new year, just to kind of inspire and refresh myself. This one is literally called Rest. It's by Alex Soojung-Kim. Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. This book I love. I've read 3 times in the last year and a half, which is when I had first read it last fall, and it's incredible. It basically takes down like a very well-researched argument for why we often neglect like our work-life balance, but we often neglect the resting part. Like we always look at how successful people are productive in terms of how they get everything done, but we never look at how do they rest, how do they use their free time, what are they doing in between. And this talks about different ways that people do active rest, which is really like ironically like active, like it's actual rest, because like sitting there like watching TV at the end of the night, binge watching TV, nothing wrong with that of course, but that's kind of like passive rest, whereas like active rest is like taking a walk, you know, taking an intentional nap, like different things like that. And this kind of goes into that. It also goes into how you can actually get more done when you rest better. So there's all the science behind it. It's really easy, like a great read. I find it very easy to get into, and I really enjoy this. It's an excellent book. I also read his other book, The Distraction Addiction, this month, and I love the cover for this. How like great is this illustration? Really says everything in a picture right there. I like this one, but not as much as this other one. This one I would definitely say like a 5-star read for me. This one's more like a 3.5 to 4 for me. The reason is that it is very dense. Like it's a little less easy to get into. This one definitely flows better in my opinion and has more like applicable advice. This one I feel like the structure of it is a little harder to follow. It's a little too dense for my taste. I wish it had a little more like practical application. I feel like this book really goes over how distracted we are as a society, and if you are someone who struggles with constantly checking your email during your time off, if you constantly have your phone off, you're constantly distracted by technology, you might enjoy this. I'm fairly good with my boundaries with technology, so this one for me maybe just isn't as helpful as the rest is, since I'm a little bit of a workaholic type myself. So both are really good though, it just depends what you're looking for. I would recommend Rest the most, but I do enjoy both of these and I plan on reading them both again, probably within the next year, just because I pick up new things every time I read them and I get more inspiration, and it kind of just helps me, inspires me to kind of be better and to work on things that are important for my sanity. So I really enjoy these. I would recommend them strongly. Okay, so the next one is 2 Part Sugar, 1 Part Murder by Valerie Burns. I've been waiting on my library's waitlist for this for a couple of months. I finally got it. So excited. This was great. I talked about this a little bit in my tier ranking, all the 2022 releases I did this year, so I'll link that above if you want to check out my tier ranking of all the new releases I read this year. But this one was great. I'd say it's like a strong 3.5 stars for me. I feel like the mystery could have been maybe a little more, like a little something more there, but overall the characters were hugely enjoyable. It basically takes place with our main character Maddie, who is like a social media expert, kind of influencer, and she moves from this big city into this like small town in the middle of nowhere in like Michigan. She's not used to the small town life whatsoever. She is out of her element entirely. It's freezing cold. She's not used to that at all. I want to say she's from Florida, but point aside, she's out of her element, and she basically is left this beautiful home and this bakery by her aunt. But the condition is that she must stay there in the house with the aunt's giant mastiff baby, really adorable, and run the bakery for a year, and then she can decide to sell it if she wants. So she's kind of stuck if she wants to actually reap the benefits of what her aunt's left her. So she decides to stay, and throughout the book, of course, she kind of falls in love with the town and everything. However, while she's there, a murder happens, and one of the knives from her bakery is actually used. So it looks like someone's trying to set her up or set up somebody in the bakery. Someone's trying to close the bakery down. So she's on the case trying to figure that out, and it's just really interesting. The characters in this were very colorful. I felt like all the employees at the bakery were super interesting. I loved learning about her aunt Octavia, who even though she had passed away, you still learn some really interesting facts about her throughout the book. And I feel like Maddie had some good character growth throughout this book, so I'm very excited. Book 2 is supposed to come out next year. I already have that on my list. Stay tuned. I will be doing a most anticipated 2022 releases video, and I anticipate that one will be on that video because I'm very excited for it. Another book I read this month was called Peg and Rose Solve a Murder by Lauren Berenson, and I really enjoyed this book. This one features Peg and Rose. It's an offshoot of a different series that the author has written. I'll put the name on screen. I haven't actually read that series, but it's about dogs. And we get to kind of explore this series with Peg and Rose, who are sisters-in-law, but they really hate each other's guts. Like, I mean, they start the book off and they do not like each other. They get along like cats and dogs, like literally. Peg is a huge like dog groomer, dog judge, and she loves poodles. Rose is like an ex like nun or something like that, living a pretty simple like happy life with her husband, and she decides to reach out to Peg after all these years and invite her to go to a bridge club with her. And it's kind of seemingly out of the blue. They decide to go together. There's a lot of bickering. They're not getting along great. However, somebody in the bridge club is actually murdered, and so the two of them start to put their heads together, work together, and actually solve the mystery. It is so great. The characters in this were very colorful. I thought the mystery was well thought out, but I really, really love the characters. I feel like you got to learn a lot of interesting things about like bridge and poodles and dog shows and things like this too. So if you like learning like little interesting tidbits and really stepping into other people's shoes in cozy mysteries, I would recommend this. I thought it was really enjoyable. Book 2 is supposed to come out next year, so I'm very much excited for that as well. So the one I was referencing in the intro to the video, that's a little bit of an older mystery series, but I really enjoyed it. It's called This Pen for Hire. It's by Laura Levine, and it's called a Jane Austen mystery series. This is book 1 in the series. I picked this up because the main character is a freelance writer, and I am also a writer. That's what my full-time job is, and I just love reading books, you know, of people who are somehow related to writing or books and stuff like that. It's just a favorite theme of mine. This book was so funny. Like, I truly don't know if I've laughed out loud so much at a cozy mystery before. The writing for this was just so witty. There was a lot of satire. There's definitely some stronger, like, I would say not strong like language, not like it's like super dirty or anything like that, but definitely it's stronger and it goes a little bit harder and further with the humor than a lot of cozy mysteries I've read. But the author did it in such a way that it was really funny and enjoyable, and you could tell it was very much playful. It wasn't like meant to ruffle someone's feathers or something. It was just really entertaining. The basic synopsis of this is that our main character, Jane Austen, is basically a freelance writer, and she does a ton of different writing projects. She writes, like, you know, wanted ads. She writes like white paper. She writes like all these different types of things. Basically any way she can get work. She's living in a big city, it's very expensive. And she's reached out to by this man who basically wants her to write a love letter, like an undying love letter, to this really gorgeous aerobics instructor that he's never even met face to face. And at first she's like thinking, okay, this guy is a complete nerd, like there is no way this is gonna work out, like I don't feel comfortable writing this is not my kind of thing, but she really needs the money, so she takes him up on the job. And surprisingly, her writing must be very good. It works. He gets a date with her. He gets a date with he gets a date with this very sought after aerobics instructor, and it was just very, very interesting. He gets the date, he arrives at her door to pick her up, and he finds her dead, which I can't even imagine. That's absolutely terrible. You're looking forward to this evening and then you find someone dead. Like, wow. And so he ends up landing in jail because he was on the scene, and he seems like he could have a motive for it. And so Jane feels really guilty, and she ends up getting involved trying to figure out what had happened, because she, you know, feels bad that this guy is in jail. Like, he doesn't really have anybody. He's like kind of alone in the world. He's kind of nerdy and not maybe the most socially competent, and it's such a funny mystery. I so enjoyed it. There was definitely some references and things like to the very early 2000s, which was interesting to read about as well, and it was really good. It was really funny. I've never read such a funny cozy mystery in my life. I cannot wait for book 2. It was just so funny. Another cozy mystery that I just loved reading was Blackmail and Bibingka. This is part of the Tita Rossi's Kitchen Mystery series. It's book 3. It just came out in October, and I was looking forward to this so much because it's a Christmas mystery, and I love Christmas mysteries, and this has been a top tier like cozy mystery series for me this year. I started the first one in early 2022. Loved book 2. That was my favorite out of the 3 so far, but book 3 was also super amazing. Basically, our main character Lila is a Filipina American, and she is working in a cafe with her friends that's called the Bruja Cafe, like witch in Spanish, which I think is just such a clever play on words, since it's like a coffee cafe where they brew coffee. And basically her cousin Ronnie is back in town after ditching the family like 15 years ago. Like, no one has heard a word from this guy. He's created so much trouble when he was in town. He just left. He broke Layla's aunt Tita Rossi's heart, basically, because this is her son, and he just shows up and he's bought a winery, and things seem to actually be going okay. Her aunt has opened her arms to her son, but everyone else in the family is kind of like waiting for him to mess up because of all of the past issues. However, things are kind of going well until someone in his life ends up dying and he becomes a suspect in the case. So out of the goodness of her heart, Layla decides to investigate the case because her aunt's begging her to, and to try to figure out if her cousin was actually responsible for the death. And it's a really well thought out mystery. I thought the characters, again, just really interesting, very relatable, very fleshed out. I love her family. It feels very real. You know, a lot of family dynamics and stuff. Just, you know, you have family members you clash with, you have family members you get along well with, you love, you hate, you bicker, you all love each other again. It's just a really great family dynamic in this cozy mystery series, and the food sounds so good. I really enjoyed learning more about some of the Christmas like Philippine traditions, because I'm just not really familiar with that food or that culture really, so this was just a really interesting look at that, and I really want to try bibingka now. It sounds pretty cool. So I don't know if I have anywhere near me that serves food like that, but I'm going to be looking into it because I'm very curious now. Alright, so another huge hit for me this year was Marmee by Sarah Miller. This was I've so looked forward to this. This was on my winter TBR. I'll link that above if you want to check it out. It has some really great recommendations for winter reading if you're interested in some winter themed books. And Marmee is basically a retelling of Little Women, which is one of my all-time favorite classics. Like, I have it right here on the shelf behind me. I've read this book, Little Women, over a dozen times. It's like a running joke in my family because I've read this book so many times. I love it. Louisa May Alcott has the most beautiful writing. It's so sentimental and cozy but impactful. It's just beautiful. Every time I read this, it's like, I feel like the words are like written on my insides because I've read it so much they've become a part of me. So when I saw that Sarah Miller had released Marmee, which is a retelling of Little Women but from Marmee, the mother's perspective, I was a little nervous because I didn't want it to taint my opinion of Little Women in any way because I love the book so much. It was so good. It was amazing. So it had all the perfect cozy vibes. It went over a lot of the same scenarios and stories that you have in the original, but it gave it a little bit of a darker, deeper meaning because you're looking at it from the mother's perspective. So she's making comments on the politics at the time, the civil war that's going on. She's talking about her worries for her husband who's away at war. You get to see the fear of the time in a more realistic way because her daughters at this time are anywhere from like 10 to 16 at the beginning of Little Women, I want to say. So they're pretty young and she's trying to protect them. So you really get to see more of the dark side of the story and like it's more fleshed out. You also get to learn about how the March family lost their fortune because Marmee, her family was pretty well off from what I know, and when they got married, like, and Meg and Jo were very little, the two oldest daughters, they actually had quite a bit of money, but by the time we start reading Little Women and all 4 of the daughters are born, they're pretty much destitute, like they're barely scraping by, especially with the war times making everything worse. So you get to learn more about what happened to their finances, you get to learn more about, like, the mother's opinions on like the different relationships like between Laurie and Jo and like different people, and it's so interesting. If you like Little Woman at all, like, you will love Marmee. I thought it was so well written. It really embodied the same vibe and it answered some questions. It really gave some great explanations for some things that you didn't get fully answered in the original, so I really enjoyed that. Okay, and the next one is Word to the Wise by Jenn McKinlay. This is part of one of my favorite cozy series, which is Library Lovers Mystery Series. Basically, our main character, Lindsay Norris, she's a library director at this place called Briar Creek, and it's kind of like this small town, I want to say it's like in Massachusetts or some kind of like, you know, seaside town on the East Coast, and she's a library director there, and she starts to receive kind of these like stalker messages, and this man keeps coming in and like following her. He's showing up everywhere. She's very uncomfortable and she's trying to tell him off, and it's not really working, and her fiance Sully is getting quite concerned, of course, as are the rest of her like friends and family and stuff. They're all getting pretty concerned because this guy keeps showing up and they're worried about her safety. Well, one day they actually find the stalker dead. And it appears to be staged where it's kind of incriminating Lindsay's fiance Sully. So basically she gets involved in this case trying to figure it out because she's worried that Sully will be pinned for the crime even though she knows he didn't do it. This was a pretty intense cozy mystery. I don't know if I've read one with a stalker really before, and it was intense. Like, it was definitely, like, I had some chills going because just the stalker stuff really creeps me out, but it was a really good cozy mystery. It was very well thought out. It was very interesting. I really liked how everything concluded. I thought, again, the characters in this are just so stellar. The writing is so easy to fly through because it's so just well written and interesting and engaging. I always fly through these books because they're just one of my favorite series. So I definitely recommend this. This one definitely didn't miss the mark. It stands the test with all the other ones. I really love it. Alright, so 2 more books, and we have some nonfiction. Actually, this one is called You Are a Bad at Making Money by Jen Sincero. I'm not going to say the full word, but you can either read it there or make your own guess on that. But this is basically a motivational book about mastering the mindset of wealth. I've owned this for a couple of years, and I like to reread it occasionally just because it's a very motivational, inspirational, whenever you need like a little bit of help because maybe you're feeling you just need a boost, you know. This is a good one to read. I personally like this. It's a lot about challenging your mindsets with money. Like, you know, a lot of us think, oh, money's very hard to make. Money's, you know, if you want to make money, you're greedy. Like, we have like kind of these mindsets that maybe we're taught from how we grow up or how society views money, things like that. And the thing is that money in itself isn't a bad thing at all. Like, it can give you a lot of freedom, it can give you a lot of options, and you can help other people when you have these options and when you have money to give and stuff. So I think this is a really great book to kind of help revamp your mindset with money and to kind of work towards it, and I just find it really inspiring, especially as someone who owns their own business. So I really enjoy this. It's just a good reread, and I just find it helps kind of give me a boost. The other one I read this month was called Make Time, How to Focus on What Matters Every Day by Knapp and John Zeratsky, and this is a book I checked out from my library. I really enjoy this. I haven't read anything by these guys before. They do actually have another book or 2 out that they co-wrote, and I found this very interesting. They wrote the book Sprint, it looks like. Basically, this book goes into this process. I'm gonna go over it really quick. There's 4 parts to the process. highlight, laser, energize, reflect. So highlight is every day you're supposed to pick a focal point to the day, like one goal. If you accomplish nothing else, this is like the big thing for the day. Laser is beating distraction to make time for your highlight. Energizing is taking care of your body to recharge your brain and like your motivation and willpower. And lastly, reflecting, which is adjusting and improving your system and how you go about accomplishing things every day. So I really enjoyed this. Basically, in addition to that breakdown and like kind of setting a system up, they then give you a bunch of different strategies to accomplish each of those 4 steps. What I like about this is that unlike a lot of self-help books, they made a point to say, hey, not all of these are going to help you. Not all these tips will help you, but that's why we have like, I think they have 84 in total between the 4 sections. That's why they have such a variety, because out of all of those, you're going to find something that works for you. And the idea is to find what works for you, not to do all of them. So I kind of like that approach they took. I feel like a lot of self-help books don't do that. So that was really nice to have that just set up front. I feel like there were some interesting and novel approaches in this book that I haven't seen with other self-help, and I definitely took some things from it, so I'm excited to try some of these out in my own personal life. I feel like I've just been so rushed for time recently, and I know that's a common feeling, especially with November, December. You have the holidays. This is personally one of the busiest times of the year for my business. It's crazy. It's a really big time of year. You got family coming in. So I know January will get a little bit slower and that'll help in general, but this was a good reminder and kind of refresher on some ideas for some ways that I can maybe try to really highlight and focus in on what is truly important and how to accomplish that. So it was a good book to start the new year off. If you're watching this, I hope you are having a happy start to your 2023. I can't believe it's 2023. What happened? Thank you guys again for watching. Please let me know down below, what did you read in December and what was your favorite book you read? Let me know why you'd recommend it. I always look forward to hearing your recommendations. Thank you again for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I do upload new book content every single week, especially within like the mystery, thriller, historical fiction genres, and some occasional nonfiction too. I'd love to have you stick around with me, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!